Today we're going to make a Bubinga and Spalted maple box to hold these router bits. And if you stay tuned until the end of the episode, I'll tell you how you can enter for a chance to win it. The bits you see in front of you are provided by the sponsor of today's show, and that's Bits and Bits Company. Enter coupon code SimpleCove15 to save 15% off your next order. Check them out at bitsbits.com. This project is perfect for all the scrap lumber that you have laying around in the shop. I have these pieces left over from the Bubinga wall cabinet that was perfect for this box. I'm doing some measuring to make sure that I got enough stock on hand, and then I take it over to the joiner planer to take it down to a 1/2 inch in thickness. And then later on we're going to use the bandsaw to resaw the spalted maple for the bottom and the top panels. While you're watching this clip, I wanted to let you know that I released a new podcast. It's called the SimpleCove Podcast, and I interview members of the SimpleCove.com community, and we do a deep dive into one of their projects. It's such an awesome podcast. There's 5 episodes that are up right now, so if you want to check it out in your favorite podcasting app, it's called the SimpleCove Podcast. Check it out. Using the miter gauge, with the blade tilted to 45 degrees, I cut the miters on all 4 pieces. Next, I need to cut the piece that holds the bits. This is basically a 1x1 square that's right around 10 inches long. It's a little bit longer than it needs to be, but I'll take it down to the proper size here in just a bit. Even though I used a roundover bit, the bottom still had a flat spot because I probably didn't raise the bit high enough, so I just used a spoke shave to finesse that, and then I used some sandpaper to make it perfectly round. Using the crosscut sled, I cut the piece to length, and then I head over to the drill press, put in a 5/8 of an inch Forstner bit, and then I drill the 3/4 of an inch holes for all 4 bit holders. And finally, at the router table, I installed a 1/4 inch spiral bit, and this is going to route the grooves for the top and the bottom panel. I went back to the scrap pile to find a better looking piece of spalted maple. This had quite a bit more figure than the other board, so this is the one that I resawed at the bandsaw. When gluing up box parts like this, I like to use a reference surface like some sort of table saw fence, router fence, or in this case, a crosscut sled fence. And that's just going to ensure that the box bottoms are perfectly aligned and in plane. So I'll flip it over, put some glue on the miters, and then tape it up. While you're watching me glue the box up, I wanted to mention that I do have a second YouTube channel, and that channel is where I post all kinds of behind the scenes stuff and some offcuts where I talk about jigs, the shop, what's going on. I've got a few videos over there with the plans of releasing more, so click the link in the description to check out and subscribe to my second YouTube channel. There's a few different ways that you can cut the lid loose from the box. You can use a table saw, bandsaw, handsaw, but I opted to use the bandsaw. Just make sure it's dialed in pretty good, take your time, and it won't leave you with too rough of a surface. And as you can see, mine lines up pretty darn good, so I'm happy with it. Now to smooth the edges of the box and to flatten it out, I like to use a flat surface such as this melamine with a couple different grits of sandpaper to sand the lids. And what this does is it smooths it out, gets it ready for finish, and it also makes sure that both of the surfaces are dead flat. Now we can move on to installing the hinges. So I set my double square to 3/4 of an inch. So that way both hinges will be in the same location on opposite ends. And then using a marking knife, I outline the hinge, and using a trim router with an 1/8 inch compression bit, I remove a majority of the waste, but I leave a little bit for the chisel to remove. If you're installing hinges, I highly recommend picking up a Vex self-centering bit like this. It's the perfect size, it's self-centering, which makes this process a whole lot easier. Now to transfer the hinge locations from the bottom to the top, I line the box back up, clamp it in place, and then using the marking knife, I'll stick it in the groove and then make a little tick mark on the top. And this is going to give me the perfect location for the hinges. So we know miters are inherently weak. We need to support that with splines or keys. So off the camera, I used a spline jig at the table saw to make these curves. After about a couple of hours, I can remove that waste using a flush trim saw. And you'll notice that I don't go all the way to the end. I'll stop right as the blade exits the side of the box, and then I'll rotate the box and remove the rest of the waste. And the reason I do this is because the corner grain of those splines have a tendency to break off, and that's going to leave you with a little chip out. And you'll notice the way that I remove the waste with the chisel is I start outside and work myself in, just to make sure, again, that the little spline there is not going to tear out at the corner. Because as we know, that material is not supported, and you really don't want to get that chip out. To install the router bit holder, I use a couple of screws, one on each side of the bottom of the box, and these screw holes are at the front of the box. Since the router bit holder is made out of Bubinga and that stuff is pretty hard, and because I'm using a brass screw to hold it in place, I'm pre-drilling using a small 1/16 of an inch drill bit. Now to install this holder, I've got a couple of 1/16 of an inch shims to make sure that it's lifted up off of the bottom and away from the front of the box. And I'll just install the screws a little bit at a time on each side to evenly space that router bit holder. And now I can take the router bit holder back out and spray some finish on the box. For this project, I went with a semi-gloss spray lacquer. I probably put about 4 to 5 coats on the surface, but I sprayed real light coats. Now these ultra fancy 3D printed router bit holders were made and sent to me by Dustin Penner from DP Make Stuff. If you're not familiar with his YouTube channel, I'll leave a link to that in the description below. But one little thing that makes these pretty neat, other than they look awesome, is they've got a little slot in the bottom that I can install a magnet to help hold the bits into place. And I'm holding the router bit holders in place using a 2-part epoxy. And with the glue dried, I can put the box together. And this is a really awesome looking box. I love the combination of the Bubinga and the Spalted maple, and we can't forget how awesome brass looks with the Bubinga as well. Now, if you want a chance to win this box, I'm giving it away along with all of the bits that you see inside of the box. These are brand new compression bits that are Astra coated from Bits and Bits Company. Click the link in the description below, enter your email address, and you'll be entered for a chance to win. Unfortunately, guys, sorry, but this is a United States only giveaway. I apologize, but the regulations are pretty stiff out there. So this is US only this time. I want to thank Bits and Bits Company for sponsoring this episode and for including the router bits in this giveaway. If you don't win this, don't forget there's still the 15% off coupon. You can use SimpleCove15 to save 15% off your order at bitsandbits.com. And so if you don't win these, you can go pick them up at 15% off. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next build video.